everybody and welcome. I am very excited to be filming this video today because I have been working on it for months. Today I would like to take you fabric shopping with me in my favorite fabric shops here in my home city of Paris, France. To give you some context, I am originally from the East Coast of the United States, but I moved to France in 2009 and I've been living and working here ever since. I'm now a dual citizen and I live in Paris and I've been here for about 10 years now. I even started sewing here about 7 years ago once I had a stable job and income. And so these shops that I would like to show you today are my favorite, the ones that I go to when I want to go in person to see the fabric in natural lighting and touch it and see how it drapes and moves and what the fibers feel like. And I especially wanted to share these shops with you today just in case you're curious as to what it's like shopping for fabric in Paris, or if you are perhaps planning a trip to Paris, maybe even this summer, for example, and you would like to bring home some fabric as a souvenir, because I know that's my favorite kind of souvenir to bring home when I travel abroad. Paris is an important city, if not the city, of high fashion and haute couture, and a lot of high fashion brands still have their atelier, or where they make the clothes, still here in Paris. We have a lot of fashion schools as well, and students of fashion here, and then we also have a lot of theaters with their costumes made in the theater and their atelier locally in Paris. And so luckily we have a plethora of fabric shops, brick and mortar fabric shops to choose from here in Paris, all over the city, with a wide range of budgets and types of fabric for different kinds of projects. The shops that I'd like to show you today are what I prefer when I go fabric shopping, and I have two major criteria, and one is budget. My budget is typically between 5 to 10 euros per meter, so that rules out a good number of the fabric shops here, because you can find some really gorgeous but also very expensive fabric here. And then I also like shopping for dead stock fabrics. Dead stock fabrics are leftover fabrics from fashion lines or textile mill productions, and so not only is it eco-friendly because you are saving these fabrics from being thrown away when they're not going to be used, but I also find that I often find really interesting blends of fibers, colors, and prints when I shop dead stock fabrics, and so I prefer it, and I've found some really unique pieces before in these shops. Some of these shops even have been involved in some of the most important events in my life, in that I bought fabric from there to make garments for these important events. All in all, I'm really happy to be sharing these with you. So I have 8 fabric shops to show you today, located in 2 different neighborhoods. So the first is Sentier, which is by Châtelet in the center of Paris, and then the second is Saint-Pierre, which is probably much better known because it's right by the Sacré-Cœur and in Montmartre. But before we begin, I wanted to give you some tips for fabric shopping here in Paris. The first is probably kind of obvious. It's that fabric is measured in meters in the metric system here, so millimeters, centimeters, meters. The second is that you'll find a lot of shops that sell pre-cut lengths of fabric called coupon, which is spelled coupon, and it's usually about 1.5 meters to 3 meters per cut, and some shops sell only that. The last tip is more cultural and very important, probably the most important tip, and it is greetings. Greetings are really important in France, so when you walk into an establishment such as a restaurant, hotel, shop, typically someone will greet you and say hello, and you are expected to say hello back. If you don't, it's considered really rude. And you don't have to speak French, you can just say hello. Or bonjour, you know, it doesn't have to be an entire conversation. You could even just make eye contact and nod. But just make sure to acknowledge your fellow human being. That's very important here, and yeah, it's considered a pretty big snub if you don't. So service might not be very friendly after. So now that you have those tips, I will let my past self take it away on an early spring day when I filmed this that started off sunny and ended up very windy and rainy, as you'll see, and I hope you enjoy. The first neighborhood of shops I'd like to show you is Sentier, a neighborhood of many fabric shops featuring mostly dead stock fabric. These shops are intimate in that they are mostly all very small, but don't be afraid to go. A more personalized experience with more attention and help from the shopkeepers is more likely, and there are some really beautiful fabrics to be found. The first shop I'd like to show you is Todo, a chain fabric shop that you can find all over France and in a few different locations around Paris, although that will be changing very soon. This particular shop is 2 floors with, on the ground floor, upholstery fabrics, bedding linens, and a haberdashery. Then on the second floor is where you'll find all of the garment making fabrics. You'll find printed cottons, viscose fabrics, lycra and costume fabrics, printed linens, and many more. This shop has a large variety of fabrics at a low to mid-range pricing. They even have a section, for example, of fabrics sold by the kilo if you're motivated to dig through it. I managed to resist temptation here, but you can often find great fabrics and interesting prints and natural fibers here, and I like to stop and browse when I can. However, many Todo shops around the country, including this one, are closing definitively as of mid-July 2024, so this shop won't be around for much longer. If you are able to shop here before they close, there will be big sales in the shop and online. The next shop just around the corner and up the street is Tissus de Rêve, which means dreamy fabrics. This shop also has a big online shop where you can often find promotions and discounted fabrics, so I highly recommend checking it out. They sell dead stock fabrics that are mostly from mid to low range ready-to-wear fashion lines, so sometimes the fabric is too much composed of polyester or too glittery for my taste, but I have found some really great treasures here in the past, so I recommend checking it out. On this day I saw some really beautiful jacquard fabrics in rich colors, some interesting wool fabrics in classic colors, a lovely butterfly wing looking viscose, and an interesting knit fabric, but I once again resisted temptation. Another shop I'd like to present to you is new to me and called Tissart, which is a play on words and means fabric art, but I had been following them on Instagram and their selection looked really intriguing, and so I wanted to check them out. What I discovered was beautiful mid to high quality fabrics in all kinds of fibers and at good prices, and so I was impressed with what I found. The only difficulty is that very few of the fabric bolts are labeled, so not only is the fiber content a mystery, the price is too, which means that you will have to interact with these shop assistants, but they were very friendly and I'm sure that they speak English, so if you're not comfortable speaking in French, I don't think that would be a problem. Luckily, the shop assistant that day knew all of the fabrics in the shop pretty well, had excellent advice, and was happy to show me around. On this occasion, I saw some really gorgeous fabric, and I will definitely be coming back to shop here more often. The last shop I'd like to show you in this neighborhood is So Tissu, my favorite of this neighborhood. This shop has a pretty great online shop as well, so don't hesitate to check that out. The shop itself is impressive. There is fabric from floor to ceiling and just a tiny space to walk between the bolts. I wouldn't recommend this shop if you're claustrophobic or on the weekend. I was lucky enough to be able to take off a day from work and film this on a Monday morning, but it was still a balancing act, edging around and climbing over the fabric rolls, all by myself in the shop. That said, they have a beautiful selection of good quality, interesting dead stock fabrics, and I often find really beautiful fabric here, and the selection I saw on this day didn't disappoint. Then it was time for a break and lunch, and I stopped by a small Japanese cafe where they sell matcha lattes and onigiri, my favorite. And then I was off to the next location, the Saint-Pierre neighborhood, by the Sacré-Cœur. In this neighborhood full of fabric shops and located in the picturesque Montmartre, you can find not only dead stock fabrics, but also beautiful fabric staples, specialty fabrics like wedding dress fabrics or costume fabrics, and home upholstery fabrics. The first shop I'd like to show you is the iconic Marché de Saint-Pierre, which is a multi-story behemoth where you can find all kinds of fabric. It is great for finding staple fabrics in solid colors such as cotton and linen in multiple weights, stretch fabrics, denim, and even tencel fabrics in a rainbow of colors. They even have a wedding counter with specialty wedding dress fabrics. In this shop, to have your fabric cut, you have to find a shop assistant, typically holding a wooden measuring stick, and show them the fabric that you like. They will follow you to the fabric and cut it in front of you, and then hand you the fabric and write you a ticket, indicating the amount of fabric cut and the price per meter to bring to the till. The particularity of this shop is that you have to pay per floor, so pay for the fabric on the floor where the bolt is, if you have it cut before moving on to the next floor. So find a till and then pay there, and then you're all set if you want to go to another floor with your fabric. This system can be difficult and time-consuming on days when it's crowded. It can take a long time, for example, to find an available shop assistant to cut your fabric, so I recommend going on a weekday or in the morning. The next shop I'd like to show you is the Coupon Saint-Pierre, and they sell pre-cut quantities of fabrics at a heavily discounted price. They have fabric bins outside and inside organized by fiber content and lots to look through. These fabrics are not always of very good quality, but I've found some great fabrics here before. Wools, viscoses, even linen or jean fabrics at 5 to 15 euros for 3 meters. And it is a great place for affordable fabrics if you are starting out and your fabric budget is low. The next shop is Tissus Rennes, another very popular shop for its traditional setup and mid-sized dolls displaying the fabrics for sale. This shop is a little bit more expensive, but there is some really nice fabric here. The fabric they sell is not so much dead stock and more designer fabric. You'll find some Liberty fabric here, for example. I recently came here quite often because they have an excellent wedding dress fabric counter and a good selection at good prices. This is where I found the affordable tulle fabric that made up the middle layers of my wedding dress skirt and my veil. At €9 per meter, it was a steal. My favorite part of this shop is actually the second floor where the haberdashery is and an impressive wall of buttons. I like to come here when I'm looking for nicer buttons for a project or in a very specific color. Here again, you have to pay per floor, but if you have fabric cut for you on the ground floor and you want to explore the upper floors, they will hold your fabric at the till until you're ready to come back down and pay. The last shop I'd like to show you today is my favorite of this neighborhood, and it is Sacré Coupon. This shop sells their fabrics mostly in pre-cut quantities, and it is a little bit more expensive, more on the 10 to 20 euro per meter pricing range, but they have sometimes the most beautiful fabrics. This is where I found the water-resistant cotton gabardine fabric in the perfect shade of beige for my Isla trench coat, for example, or the neoprene-backed houndstooth viscose fabric I made my Sew Over It cocoon coat in. This is also where I found what I call my mermaid fabric, a beautiful viscose fabric I made into a Donovan skirt last year. I love looking through their fabrics, and I was sorely tempted to buy this pinstriped linen fabric. It was just so lush and bouncy. But at 45 euros for 3 meters, it was not in my budget, unfortunately, and I had to sensibly leave it there. But I still think about it today, and I somewhat regret my choice. With all that shopping done, I was tired out, and I treated myself to a quintessential coffee on a Parisian terrace and gave my feet a rest before embarking on the journey home. And oh boy, was it a relief to be inside after battling the spring elements all day. But nothing a nice warm bath and a hot chocolate couldn't soothe. So now that I'm back, let me show you what I bought. So firstly, I was pretty good at resisting temptation because at the time I was saving up for my honeymoon in Japan. And so I am very proud of how much I resisted such beautiful fabric, because now looking over the footage, I don't know if I would be so strong today. But I bought 3 different fabrics on this day, and 2 from the Sew Tissu shop, which was the 4th shop I showed you in Sentier. And first, I bought this really beautiful abstract printed silk fabric. It is 100% silk and really lovely. I love the drape of this. And the background is more off-white than white, and the sort of abstract print more of a dark gray, so it's not as harsh as white against black. And I'm thinking of making a Sew Over It silk cami out of this, because I think it would be really lovely against the skin. And ever since Sew Over It expanded their size range for that pattern, I've been wanting to try the size 6 because their size 8 is just a little bit too big on me, and that used to be the smallest size. And so in past versions I had to take in the shoulder seams, and even the neckline is still a little bit too gapey, so I want to try that. And I think it would look really beautiful, especially layered under cardigans to wear to work, for example. And then the second fabric that I bought also at Sew Tissu is this embroidered black cotton. The color's gonna blow out a bit, sorry about that, but here. So it's somewhat see-through, and it's got this sort of striped embroidery on it, and I think it looks really beautiful. And so I would like to make, I think, an O's Patterns Brené top. I've made this top twice before, and I made it in a plain white version 2 summers ago, and I wear that in constant rotation in the summertime. And so I think in this embroidered black fabric, it's going to be really beautiful, a really beautiful basic, and also really light and airy for the summertime when it's hot. The third fabric I bought was actually at the Marché de Saint-Pierre, the first one that I showed you in the Saint-Pierre neighborhood, and it is 4 meters of this really diaphanous cotton voile, so 100% cotton in white. And I'm thinking of using this as more of a lining because I have a few projects that I'd like to make this summer that are in fabrics that are not quite opaque. And I think that this would be a really light and hot weather friendly lining for it, just to keep it from being transparent and not so much for static, because this wouldn't help very much for static, but I don't think it's very staticky either. It's not polyester. And then I also, one day, maybe I'll go back and buy some more if I don't have enough, I would really like to make sort of a really romantic nightgown out of this really light cotton with lots of gathers and maybe some smocking, maybe some romantic sleeves and romantic sort of wide neckline, but that'll be a future project. But I'm really happy with this purchase. It's very soft and I'm excited to work with it. And then while I was out, I bought 2 different kinds of buttons that I'm really excited about, and I've already actually used them and incorporated them into spring projects that I finished a few weeks ago. And the first are these really beautiful blue-gray buttons that I bought for my Jenna cardi in the hip-length version with the 3/4 sleeves that I made this spring. And I accidentally only bought 6, and so there are 2 buttons at the bottom of the cardigan that are from a button stash that I have, but I really like the way that they look against this light blue color, and I think it looks really, really nice in this project. And the second are these beigey brown resin buttons that I purchased for my Sew Over It Aran skirt that I made for my honeymoon in Japan, and these look really beautiful against the light blue cotton twill, and I really like the way that they look in this project. So there you have it. Those are all 8 shops that I highly recommend you check out if you'd like to do some fabric shopping in Paris. There are many other shops in both these neighborhoods and in other neighborhoods in Paris, so don't hesitate to explore. A lot of them are really great too. These are just my top shops. If you have a favorite Parisian fabric shop that I didn't mention that you like going to, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments below. I will be looking, and then perhaps that will help other people who are planning their trip to Paris to have even other shops to check out if they're staying in a different neighborhood or they won't be able to get to the ones that I mentioned. That would be really helpful, and I'd love to see them. If you like this video, don't hesitate to leave a thumbs up. It helps other people find this video too. And subscribe so you don't miss any new videos. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're all doing well too. And I will see you again here soon. Bye-bye.